Hi, my name is Christine.
My name is Sissel.
And we're both IAM consultants from Truesec. And we're really excited to be here today to tell you more about the field of identity and access management and why we have chosen a career in this field.
Before we deep dive into the subject, we would like to tell a bit more of where we're from and what we do. So we work in Truesec, and Truesec is the biggest cybersecurity house in the Nordics. We have more than 300 colleagues, and we're spread across Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Germany. And we all work together towards the same purpose of securing and have a safe digital future with the missions of preventing breaches and minimize impacts as much as possible.
So a little bit more about us. As I said, I'm an IAM consultant, and I've worked in IAM now for the past 4 years. My educational background is in business and IT from Aarhus University. And right now I do mostly IAM advisory and then also some project management with domain experience. So what we usually call like a technical project manager. I actually ended up in IAM quite by chance because I applied for another position at a company that someone else was a better fit for. But then they called me and said that, now we have this open position in IAM that we really think that you would be well suited for. And after I heard more about it, I agreed that really sounds like something for me. And then here we are 4 years later, still doing the same.
Yeah.
So that's also why I'm really happy to be here, to be able to let more people in on this field and what it can and who it could be a good fit for. Because when I started job searching, I didn't know about it at all, and actually not that much about cyber in general.
I have kind of the same background story for why I joined IAM. I didn't know what to do until I wrote my master thesis, where I was lucky enough to follow a project where they had IAM being implemented, and that's how I learned about it, and I was hooked from that day on. And now I've worked with IAM for more than 8 years, and I also work as an IAM consultant. My primary focus is on the governance and the compliance and the business processes, which I really enjoy doing. And I've written on the slide that I'm kind of, but I think that we both are a living proof of that you can be in an IT industry and the cybersecurity IT industry without having to work with deep technical tasks. But there are many other things that you can actually do and use your competencies for if you're not passionate about the technical part, but more on the how can you say it, the process and the organizational side of it.
So what will you learn here today? We'll kind of start with the basics on what IAM is, and then we'll move on to why is it important. And here we'll start on like a kind of like a societal level on IAMs, how it fits into the cyber realm and how it protects society. Before we move a little bit more into why is it important for companies and why do they choose to invest in IAM. And then again, we've touched on it a little bit now, but we'll move back again to why do we choose a career in IAM, and who else do we think should do the same, and then which competencies is it that we need. To start off, what is IAM? So basically IAM is about making sure that the right people have the right access at the right time. And as you can see here on the slide, it's all about, both policies and technologies that govern the identities that you have in your organization and make sure that they have access to the right applications and, platforms, data, servers, databases, could be anything. Mm-hmm. And there's this sentence that is usually used to describe kind of like the purpose of the discipline. And that is that we're making sure that the right people have the right access at the right time for the right reasons, and that this is approved by the right people. Yeah. It's a little bit long, but it's also a broad field. Yeah. And so kind of from like a cyber perspective, what we're making sure here is that we have confidentiality. So that is all about, who can see the data, and that you also have the integrity in place, which means that you're able to trust the data that you see. And also, as you can see, there are a lot of different areas within IAM. What we work with the most here is identity governance and administration, and that is also what Sissel is gonna talk more about now.
And we also refer to this field as IGA. Imagine that for your own personal being, what is important is that you have a key to your house and that you are in control of who else has a key, if anyone else has. Organizations, institutions, so on, of course, have the same need when it comes to the access that they themselves and their employees have. And this control is what identity governance and administration can help with when you implement this kind of tool. So meaning that when you implement IGA, the organizations can implement not only a system, but also automate processes and cohere to policies where you are ensuring that security, compliance, and efficiency as well is part of the whole engine around controlling employees' access rights. And this was a very long sentence with many strong words, but this means that a lot of organizations still have a lot of manual processes when it comes to controlling employees' accesses, and that's okay. But for many organizations and institutions and so on, there are also internal and external requirements, for example, in the sense of regulations, security frameworks, policies to comply with, and so on. And when you can automate a lot of these processes with an IGA tool, you can also mature on your processes in the sense of, let's imagine that you, for example, have an employee starting tomorrow. With an IGA tool, you can automate the processes so you can ensure that your employee, when they start and when they enter the building, they already have some basic accesses so they are up and running very fast. That's kind of the efficiency part. But it's also the security part, because you are ensuring that your employee has the access that they need and only what they need. But then the security part also is very in focus if your employee changes department or position, where they no longer need the access that they have, but they need new access. Then you can also control and automate a lot of the processes around this. And the most, I would say, important one, which is also very compliance heavy, is that when you leave the organization, then the IGA solution can help ensure that all your access rights are disabled from the day that you no longer need them. So you can, and this is just a part of it that we call lifecycle for employees, but there is a lot more to these IGA tools than this. But basically, it is that an IGA solution automates access requests, also access reviews, where, for example, a manager goes through the accesses that the employee have and take a decision on if they should keep them or not. It can also be the ability to be audit ready and providing evidence of how employees got access and by who approved it and so on in reporting. So there is a lot to these IGA tools that can help when being implemented into an organization.
And now we'll go a little bit more detailed in this life cycle that Cecil mentioned. So just to start off on the right-hand side here, we'll just show you like the most important, very high-level data flow that we have in IGA, and which basically is what triggers most of the automated processes that the IGA tool has. So here you can see that the example is that there's a new employee, and what happens is that HR inputs the data of this new employee into their system, and then the IGA solution reads in the HR data, which can happen every hour, every 6 hours, every 24 hours, whatever the business has set up. But basically what happens then after this new employee, let's say Cecil was just hired, HR inputs that Cecil is now hired in department IM and with the manager Then the IGA solution will create an identity for Cecil, and this identity is going to follow her through our whole employment with Truesec. So that's just like the most important data that we get actually is what we get from HR, because that is kind of what decides where you are in your life cycle. So there's also a lot of cooperation with HR, and like that's a very important stakeholder for IAM. This was an example of a joiner process, but we also have two others. There's the mover process, which is equally as important because most companies want to keep their employees for as long as possible. And what you often do then is to offer them more, the chance to work in marketing, and then move from marketing to finance, and then move from finance to sales. And then what happens is that you over time just kind of accumulate more and more access, which makes you like a really big target for anyone that wants to just move across your whole network and get access to everything. So if you have a proper mover process where you make sure that when we read in from HR that Sissel has now changed from IAM to work in incident response, will trigger, her old manager to go in and check, does any access need to be removed from Sissel? And then also to the new manager to make sure that, is this access looking appropriate? Should anything be removed? Should anything be added, maybe? So again, here there's the security part and taking away access that you don't need. And then there's also the efficiency part and making sure that you're also getting the new access that you actually need.
Yeah, and then meeting the compliance requirements of being able to prove that what happened, that it's set in stone, that you can report on it as well.
What happened, who did it, when did it happen, who approved it. There's like all of that is logged, and you're able to just, if anyone's been involved in an audit, that's really tricky, and it's really nice to just draw a report and say, yes, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And then other than that, Sissel also mentioned that briefly on the previous slide, but there's also the leaver process, which is of course also really important, that you don't have anyone that left the company 2 years ago that still has some lingering access on some system that you kind of forgot about. That can also make you quite a big target for any employees that are feeling a little bit disgruntled or just want to make some easy money.
Yeah. Life cycle and standard processes and so on is one thing, but there is also the whole coherent to specific security policies, as for example, that you have segregation of duty, that you need to segregate so that if one person has access to access number 1, they are not allowed to have access to access number 2. And in an IGA solution, you can set up and automate those kind of policies as well. So you can ensure that if any policy violations are happening, you are informed, and you can also often tailor a process of how then to handle it. So this is also what talks into the compliance, and it's also what talks into what we see in the ways of how policies, requirements, and so on are put forward, and how organizations can show that they are compliant to these kind of things with controlled procedures.
So for example, you can't, create an invoice, pay out the invoice, and archive the invoice if you're the same person.
Exactly.
That's that is an example.
That
of
is a really good standard example.
Yeah. Based on wherever you are in this identity lifecycle, there's also a lot of access control, and I'll just briefly take you through that. So basically, as I said, Sissel has one identity, and then this identity has a lot of accounts on a lot of different systems that the IGA tool is integrated with. So we're able to see all of these accounts and basically, get visibility. You're able to see all of this. And then you can also see which privileges that you have on these different accounts. And then, as we mentioned, you're able to review. So, okay, right now Sissel has these 3 roles in this SAP system. Is that what is actually appropriate? Then someone has to make a decision, yes or no, whether it should be kept or anything should be removed. So that's kind of the strength of the whole access control that is built on top of your identity.
So when we look at the current situation of cybersecurity and what we also call IAM by the numbers, what you can see right now on the slide is that there are some facts in our current situation that speaks for itself when it comes to why should we implement IAM. And for example, we see a general increase in cyber attacks across all industries. So it's regardless of the industry, it's regardless of size, that the risk is. So it's with an increase of 221% compared to 2022, which is really a lot. And what we see in general, and what we have a fact on, is that 61% of breaches involve credentials. As it also states, it highlights the need for IAM, because what we can also see is that one of the primary tactics used for attacking organizations, institutions, and so on, is that compromising user accounts and misusing these credentials can, for the malicious intruders, bring them on their way in to find restricted data, information, and everything else that we don't want them to get their hands on. We see that IAM is part of, and what we talked about earlier with the line of defense, to kind of enhance the security and limit a lot of these threats by governing the digital identities and thereby their access rights. And we can also see that, for example, as it states here, that 50% of IAM implementations are driven by compliance requirements. So this also cohere with the evolvement and the threats and the vulnerabilities that we see in cybersecurity market. Then, of course, compliance needs to follow, and it does follow with. So new regulations are coming, new security frameworks are bringing in new control principles and so on. And that's also why that becomes an increasing capability for organizations to be able to comply with when it comes to them having their requirements, both internally and externally, extending as well.
So the role of IAM during a breach, we'll just give 3 different examples here. The first one is the insider threat, and that is basically someone inside your organization is the one that's being malicious. So it's not an outside actor that is hacking into your systems from, Russia or something. It's someone that's employed with you that is doing the malicious activity. And this is often overlooked, but we actually see a lot of examples of this. And also recently here in Denmark, has been some examples. So I think it shouldn't be underestimated. And IAM can minimize the scope of this insider breach as well as the potential damage that it can actually do by adhering to this principle of least privilege. And that is basically making sure that everyone has only the access that they need and nothing more. Other than this, we also have the possibility to create these policies that make sure that we can't have any toxic combinations, like the example we gave with not being able to create and also, expense an invoice. That is also something that brings down the likelihood of insider threats quite a lot, as well as the fact that when we close down people's access, once they leave the organization, they are not able to do any harm after their employment ends, which is when they usually, if they are going to feel a little bit disgruntled, that is when we see that happening the most. So there are some different aspects that make sure that, this insider threat is really reduced. And then other than that, we also have the access control. And, in the event of a cyber breach actually happening, then, having really robust access control really limits the attacker's ability to kind of move laterally within your network and, to access more critical information than what is needed. So kind of, again, this goes back to enforcing the principle of least privilege and making sure that, if a breach happens, then at least we're containing it as much as possible. And, again, if someone's been in IT, marketing, finance, they're not going to be able to move across your whole network. You're keeping it as small as possible. Lastly, we also have, as we said, one of the big strengths of IAM is that you're able to give really detailed logging and reporting. And in the case that a breach has happened, and then now you need to kind of do the incident response and the forensic analysis and find out, okay, what is it specifically that has happened? Then these logs and reports are really crucial in kind of making a timeline as detailed and as quickly as possible. So this can be anything from, how did the breach occur, which systems were compromised, which users are involved, and kind of, the extent of the damage is really important to get established as soon as possible when something like this happens. And this will help, contain the breach once it's active, and it will also help you restore the systems to a secure state once it has happened. Yeah, so we're very involved with, preventing breaches, but once they happen, we can also, give a lot of important insights to help it contained.
So what we see that are typical scenarios that a lot of our customers are challenged by is what is listed on the screen right now. And we have different scenarios of some are experiencing getting audit findings due to the difficulties of meeting compliance requirements. Some are experiencing high costs and unnecessary time spent on manual user administration processes such as giving access or removing access. There are some customers that are failing to administrate the lifecycle that we have talked about previously about onboarding or offboarding employees in a timely manner. It can also be very difficult to have the overview of these toxic access combinations and trying to set up policies and processes for segregating and avoiding these type of combinations. Some are experiencing 1 or 2, some are experiencing more, and some are not right now experiencing these challenges, but are looking into some of it. Because what we also see in this market is that as the evolvement goes of types of breaches, types of attacks, this also then creates new types of vulnerabilities. And so does compliance in the means of regulations and security frameworks, policies, control policies, principles, and all of this has to evolve as well. So to meet the internal as well as external requirements for a lot of organizations is often coherent in the terms of wanting to become compliant and raise maturity in this field as well.
Why do we work in IAM? This kind of goes back to a lot of what we talked about like really making a difference. And I think this also ties really well to what you said, that Truesec's whole purpose is that it's, preventing breach and then minimizing the impact of breach when it happens. I think we are really part of kind of making a difference here. And by bridging the gap between, IT and people and the business and really helping people strengthen their access control, what we're really doing is helping them protect their data. And depending on what customer that is, that could basically be the fact that we are, protecting our own data. So it really is about, protecting yourself and then also protecting the ones that you care about and, society.
I've talked about it just before, but as we see the evolvement in the cybersecurity area, both on the breaches and all the risks and the vulnerability side, but also then on the other side where we step in and help and enhance and mature. This evolvement in terms of that we keep developing and evolving to stay secure is super important. And we need to ensure that we have trust in everything that we do, because if we stop trusting in this and if we stop doing it, then it becomes more and more difficult to protect data and everything else, and then in the end, as you say, ourselves and the ones that we care about. We see our work and the field that we are within as being part of making a difference and doing something that is really important for ourselves and for society and for all the ones that we care about.
And then thirdly, I think we also talked about it together, that we really enjoy being in a field where, a broad set of competencies really are needed. I think it gives a really good team dynamic when we work, and we're able to use our different capabilities and really make a difference at the customers, both in terms of implementing something technically that really supports the security side, but then also changing the whole organization to a better and more secure way of working. So I think these, it just ties in really well together to a product that actually makes a difference. So we say that we have a broad set of competencies in our teams, and that's why they're working so well. But which competencies are these? So more specifically, that's anything from the architect that designs a solution, and to the engineer that implements new features and sets up integration to new systems. On top of that, we also need people to test the new functionality. We need a project manager to lead the project. And these, as I said, are projects with a lot of different stakeholders because, we have the data from HR that we're really dependent on. We're integrating with a lot of different systems in the business that we also need to have good cooperation with. So that task is also very important. And that's also why we have the IAM advisory part to ensure that we build this bridge between IT and the business, and that we're not kind of forgetting the end users and all of this technicalities. And then that also the IAM advisory also makes sure that we're always having in mind what is the value that we're bringing, and are we actually working towards setting the requirements that are both internally at the customers and externally. And is it going to end up with a project or a product that actually achieves the goals that the company set? So all these different profiles really have to work together to make the product.
And also something about that we change a lot of processes sometimes. So we also sometimes change people's way of working. So the stakeholder management part of it and communication is also really important to remember. So this the figure on the slide right now illustrates the sense of and the way that we work when we work with IAM. And our approach with our customers is always to ensure from the beginning that we are understanding and are aligned on starting out from a solid foundation where we are agreeing on the why and the what and the how, so that we can ensure in the end that, as you also said, that we stand with a project or a program or a journey that has started from one point, and at that point where maybe our journey with the customer ends, but they have to continue it, that we are standing with a product that is making a difference and that we have met the goals that were set and are helping them mature on the aspects that was important for them.
And this is just a very high-level view of how we would typically run a project. So as we said, IAM is kind of it's a program, and it can take years to finalize. So what we do is we typically split it into different phases, where each phase is around 4 to 6 months, typically. Where every phase we have the goal of both increasing the capabilities. So that means, here it can be creating roles or segregation of duties or, making a framework, anything that kind of raises the product's capabilities. But then as you can see, it's also the continuous just increasing the scope. So that means, setting up integrations to new business applications and also sending out access reviews to the systems that we are already integrated with. So this kind of goes a little bit hand in hand, building more capability and also just extending the use of the ones that we've already established.
With this illustration on the slide, we're kind of looping back to a lot of the things that we've said, because depending on what we help our customers with, whether they are within industries of pharma, they all have different needs and all organizations are different. Combined with what you also mentioned, that we set a team of very different competencies, because that's what the need is when you work with IAM. We're looking at a lot of different layers when we are working with IAM. So we can both help our customers way before they start implementing by building the strategic foundation. So we look at the regulative, we look at compliance, what do they need to be meeting of requirements, build a base. And then often they would like to start implementing the IGA solution, and then we help them by implementing the system and build the full circle around with the processes and so on, so that they can raise compliance, for example, with a lot of this. But there is also, as Christine and then as you also said, going forward, this is a journey that never ends, because cybersecurity never ends. So the journey will continue with that you then, for example, create a role model, but that also needs to be extended into more and more, and so will reporting, and so will automation of policies and handling violations, and we could just continue with all the different functionality that would just extend. So it's not in the means of it being negative that it's a journey that never ends, but it's more of that it's a journey that will continue, because you will always have to continue trying to be safe. This also means that IAM is a field where all competencies are needed. We believe in people, process, and technology, and that combined that we can achieve amazing things. We see as much as technical part of it being super important, we also see that communication and business buy-in and all the process thinking is equally important. So whether you have a mindset of an engineer or is passionate about project management, if you like to test and build test cases, or if you really enjoy governance and business processes and so on, there's room for everyone in this field. And we welcome all kind of competencies. I think that one of the most important things is that you have a passion for it and that you like working with it and think that it's fun and interesting. We sincerely hope that we have inspired some of you, or hopefully a lot of you, with what we have told about IAM, what it is and what we work with. We are of course also looking for new colleagues always, and we sincerely hope that there will be some who sees IAM as an interesting field. There is room for all competencies in this field, so we want to thank you for having seen this video, or what you can call it, through. And hope that this has been of great inspiration.